Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, no matter where you're watching us from around the globe. I say thank you for allowing us into your homes and most importantly, into your hearts. We are continuing. This is part two of the James Donaldson interview and conversation where he's just shared with us uh, some of the some of the dark points that led him to celebrating your gift of life, his second book. And James, you were just so powerfully sharing how hard it was for you as your relationship had ended, your small businesses were struggling. You weren't able to be the James Donaldson that you had been for years, and you were talking about how powerful it is for men to not be afraid to ask for help. But let me take it a step further because I think it's even harder. My son is African American,
Mhm.
and I think for African American men, there's even more of a stigma out there that you're weak if you're asking for help. Kind of dive into that of what it is to be an African American male and a former athlete, to not have to have that stigma of not being able to ask for help or rely on others. And can you kind of dive into that a little bit for us?
Yeah, I sure will. I have a daily blog I put out on standingabovethecrowd.com, and it's all about mental health awareness. I grab articles from all over the internet and repurpose them and add a little something to it and put it back out there. There was one just a couple of days ago about the rise of suicides in African American communities. And I added to that. I said, when I was a boy, uh, we never ever heard of anyone taking their life in our African American community. That was just something white people did, and we grew up with that mindset. No, that doesn't happen to black people. That nobody does that. Nobody talks about that. But we find now that it's always happened to communities of color and African American communities. We just don't talk about it. We've got a huge stigma and a huge taboo about these kind of topics. And I'm here as a larger than life African American man who has gone through these things and who is not afraid to cry and not afraid to show my feelings, my emotions, and tell people I've gone through the toughest times imaginable. I don't wish it on my worst enemy, but I pulled through it. Because I was able to share with people that I needed help, I was able to go and see my family doctor and take the prescription medicine, the prescribed regimen that he put together for me. These are things that so many of us in our African American communities are just really reluctant to do, and I'm encouraging all of us to do it. Do it. Now I know that it's foreign to so many of us. I was assigned two behavior health counselors, and both of them were white Caucasian women who couldn't relate to me gender wise, couldn't relate to me culturally wise. One of them had the advice of just counting sheep at night to get to sleep. I'm like, what? Lady,
Wow.
lady, I need $500,000 to save my business. That's what I need. And it just, so I get it that sometimes we're not on the same level with our professional professional counselors. One of the things I'm setting up with my foundation, Your Gift of Life Foundation, is to be able to provide scholarships to students of color going into the mental health professions. Any community of color out there, if you're a student and you're going in to become a mental health professional, I will pay your college tuition for you. And
Wow.
that's something that we can do. We will be doing as the years come on, rounding up money from my speaking engagements, from donations and contributions. It's tax deductible. And to be able to give that money out to students and make sure that they get into the mental health professions, and then be able to go back to their communities and be that mental health professional of color who can sit across the table from them and to work with their communities. Of the tens of thousands of mental health professionals in this country, only 2% are of color. 2%. And that's just not enough to go around. And especially in this pandemic we've been going through, uh,
Amen.
there is such a shortage. You try to book an appointment now for a mental health professional, you're waiting in line for 4 months. It just isn't happening. And so that's my advice to our communities of color, the Black community, Hispanic communities, the gay and lesbian communities, Asian communities. We typically, Native American, we typically don't want to talk about these things, but yet they're so pervasive in our communities. It's always been hush hush.
Yeah.
Don't talk about it. Even if you have that crazy uncle up in the attic, you don't talk about it. Nobody knows about it. But we've got to be able to say, okay, we need help, and this is the help that I can get that's out there for us.
Yeah, James, tell the viewers again and the people watching this show, what is that website where they can make those donations and help you with your foundation? Because again, we need to provide the help and need to provide the service for others because we all go through it. And sometimes I don't think people realize that, you know what, hey, what I'm dealing with is depression. What I'm dealing with are emotions that I need help with. And we males, we have such an ego that we're like, no, I can't cry in front of my friends and I can't show weakness. But again, talk about that foundation and where people can make those donations.
Yeah, thank you. And even today, I blogged about the fact that 2 out of 5 of us normally go through mental health challenges at some point in our life. Now it's 3 out of 5, 60% of us with the pandemic. And so my foundation is called Your Gift of Life Foundation, and it's found at yourgiftoflife.org as a nonprofit foundation. It's all about really helping us realize and cherish this whole gift of life that we are given. And we're only given one. We don't get a repeat if you throw it away, if you tarnish it, if you destroy it. I mean, that's not what God wants us to do. That's not what we should do. There are other options. And there's the saying that goes in our mental health communities, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. The
Amen.
problem's temporary, but the solution doesn't need to be permanent. You can't come back from that. So don't go there. And I didn't attempt suicide. I had it all mapped out in my mind how I was going to do it. So I don't have, scars up and down my arm or rope
Yeah, so
burn.
you didn't cut or you didn't, try to overdose on pills.
No, I didn't get to that point. I didn't want to do that. I didn't have drugs in my house. I don't do drugs. I don't drink alcohol. I didn't have alcohol. So it was going to be a chore for me to go out and purchase the things I needed to purchase in order to do away with myself. But good thing my friends kept talking to me and helping me come down and realize that this life is precious. I will get through it with some time, with some help, and I was able to get through it. So it's yourgiftoflife.org. And this gives me that platform to get out all over the country and speak to our students and our athletic teams and our corporations and businesses about mental health awareness, which is what I do quite a bit of now.
Yes, James, thank you. Let's even go deeper. Let's because it does take time and it does it's a disease and we have to know and understand. And there's people out there who are going to be listening to this and say, you know what? I do deal with depression, or I do have a manic, suicidal ideation. Share with them your ideation and how you kind of mapped it out in your head, because if it can touch one soul right now, it's going to
Yeah.
be so worth it. Do you mind sharing, what thoughts came into your head that
Yeah.
that how you were going to plan yours?
Well, I had 3 different ways I was going to execute or, do away with my life. One was by hanging. I had in my garage up in the rafters a coil of rope about 30 feet long, probably 3/4 of an inch thick. So it was a big, heavy duty rope. And that thing was up there in that rafters for 20 years. I'd drive in every day, look up there, and I'd see it. But soon I started driving in there every day and imagining myself hanging from there. And
Oh,
that was scary. My doctor advised me, James, get that rope away from you right away. Give it to somebody so you don't have to see that every time you come back home. And that was good advice. And I advise everybody if they're thinking about methods to make sure you do away with that method and keep it away from you. The other way was through, carbon monoxide poisoning, sitting in my car in a closed garage with a rubber hose from the exhaust pipe into the car window and just drifting off to sleep. I didn't know much about this. Uh, I just thought maybe I'd fall asleep. I didn't know if it was going to be painful, if I was going to be suffering or what. I didn't do it, but I had the same thing. I had a big coil of rubber tubing up there in that rafter, same thing. And I had to get rid of that, advised to get rid of that, which I did. The other one was really totally out of character. And this one was really scary. It was suicide by cop, and I've got a lot of police officer friends around Seattle, dear friends, known them for 20, 30 years. And my thought was, okay, I'll go up there and wrestle him for his gun. And he's either going to shoot me or his partner's going to shoot me dead. Okay. And I just knew it happened. That was the scariest of the three methods, because that is definitely not my character. I've never thought about those things prior. I've never thought about those things since. But when you're in that mindset, that depressed mindset, you're not in your right, healthy mind. You just don't think the way you need to think. And so I'm talking to everybody today to let them know, no matter what you're thinking about, how you're thinking about possibly doing away with your life, get rid of that temptation. If it's pills, give them to neighbors, flush them down the toilet. If it's a knife or a gun, please get rid of it. Don't have it around the house. Because the scariest thing I went through, Scott, was when I started having these impulsive voices in my head. They were telling me, go ahead and do it. You've already got it planned out. Go ahead and do it. Just do it. Just do it. It would go over and over and over. And I just had to find a way to block that stuff out, but it would come back again, especially at nighttime, 1 a.m. I'm tossing, I'm turning, my mind's spinning 100 miles an hour. And that voice would come in and say, just do it. Just do it. And I'm so glad I didn't give in to that.
Wow. James, it's emotional. And I could hear the pain that you were in at that time. And to think that, you didn't have the mental clarity to cognitively, make positive choices or healthy choices for yourself at that time. And thank goodness that you had support systems in place. What to help other viewers who may be suffering. And it is a suffering, as you can attest to. And thank you for sharing this. This is so powerful, and it's going to be so healing for others. What are the first steps? How are you able to take yourself to say, I'm not going to do this, or I can't do this, or I choose not to do this, and I need to ask for help? Because again, that's a courageous move when you're in such a deep, dark place that you can't see out of that dark tunnel. What are the steps that individual needs to do?
Well, I think when you start thinking that way, obviously something's not quite right. You have to reach out for medical professionals. You have to get them involved from the start. That would be your best way to put a game plan forward, moving forward, whether it's prescription meds or behavioral health counselors, what have you. I called the suicide prevention hotline several times and just had to go through their phone tree of things. It wasn't that helpful, I didn't think. They told me to call 911 if I hurt myself. I'm like, well, if I hurt myself, I'm probably not going to be here.
Yeah.
That didn't help. So you've got to reach out to your medical professionals, get them involved. I told my doctor, Doc, I can't sleep at night. I thought he was just going to give me a couple of sleeping pills and help me get off to sleep. And luckily for me, he was a very inquisitive, very caring kind of doctor and asked me a lot of questions. We sat there from a 15-minute appointment to a 45-minute appointment, just really drilling into what I was going through. And that's when he came up with his assessment and said, hey, we're going to get you help right now. And that day was one of those days that I was really thinking about going home and killing myself, the day I saw my doctor.
Well, I'm so glad that doctor was able to meet with you, take the time to be with you and to listen. And I gotta say, I think it's a very powerful tool because we all need connection, and we've missed that connection during the time of this pandemic. But yet listening is a skill. And if you're able to listen and make that connection, I think positive things will come from that. And I think it's okay to ask for help from friends or from family, and to have them, really hear what, you're feeling or what you were going through at the time, because that's also a crucial step into recovery. Do you agree?
I really agree. And especially dealing with guys, dealing with men.
That's
We
right.
we can be so hard headed sometimes. And
Oh, stubborn, hard. I've been called that many times in my life.
well,
So true.
over the holidays, these past 2 months ago, I was working in counseling with three men of my age group. Two of them former basketball guys, one a basketball coach, and they were all right at the verge of taking their lives during the holiday. All three of them. They were in such bad shape, and one of them in particular is so stubborn and so he doesn't want to impose on people. He doesn't want to tell people what he's going through. He doesn't want people to see him like he is. And he realizes I'm the only guy in his life at this point anymore that cares about him. And I think that's what's keeping him hanging on, is the fact that I do care. And I call him every 2 or 3 days. I send him text messages from sitting in church, letting him know I'm thinking about him. I'm praying for it. And he still, this is a difficult one for me even, he still won't get out of his own way and go see a doctor and get some medication, get some help. He doesn't want to impose. And this is a guy thing.
Yeah.
Uh, Women, I'm envious of women because they cry out each other's shoulders. They've got this tremendous support group around them. The vast majority of them anyway. And guys don't have that. And we need to build that. And that's one of the things I've really cherished moving forward, is building this network of men friends. Men used to be competitors to me, and whether in sports or in life, I'm competing.
Yeah.
Now they're friends, and this is a whole different dynamic that is so important, and it's so important for all of us to develop as we get older.
James, I remember, looking at your profile, when you graduated from Washington State, it was in psychology and sociology. My degree is in psychology. Please add me to your list of
Yeah,
friends and people on your network, and allow people to reach out to me, because you know what, if there's one commodity in life, it is time. And if
yeah,
we can take the time to support each other, encourage each other, uplift each other, empower each other, that's our whole purpose here, in this life. So please add me to that list. And I want to talk to you further about this foundation, because I see just amazing purpose in that. And I'm being very sincere when I share this with you. I think sometimes God has a plan for us, and for you and I to have this opportunity to connect and open ourselves up to our viewers and our listeners right now, I hope is going to be something where other people will also reach out and say, hey, add me to your list of men to help empower others.
yeah. Thank you so much, Coach, and I definitely will do that. Uh, you know, I can't wait until we help our first student of color get to a mental health professional degree and
Wow.
get back to communities to help. This is going to change the landscape, the playing field. Because right now, this is why so many of our communities of color will not reach out for mental health help when they need it. And so many of us, you know, we've been through the things. I mean, I've been Black all my life. I've dealt with all the issues that we talk about daily in the news and everywhere else. It's not an easy route through life, and which is why we need each other more than ever. I want to say, one of those three men I helped out over the holidays called me from New Jersey. I live in Seattle. He saw my story on Facebook or somewhere, or YouTube, and he picked up the phone and called me. I put my secondary phone line on there so people can call me directly. He called me. We talked a long, long time. former basketball player, especially overseas, European, South America, and all this. And he just said, James, your story really touched me. And I just felt compelled to pick up the phone and give you a call because he said, James, I know you'll understand. And it was so true.
Wow. The fact that you did that, that you shared your time, you shared yourself, like right now you're sharing your emotions with us. James, it's so powerful. And I can't thank you enough for this. And is there a phone number you can share with our viewers that can reach out and receive help from a professional?
Yes. Well, you can reach out to me and then I can refer you to the different mental health services that I'm aware of. And
Yeah.
I'm plugged into so many different mental health agencies here in the Seattle area. Uh,
Oh,
I want to plug into some on the national level as well. There is a phone number on my websites, yourgiftoflife.org or celebratingyourgiftoflife.com. There's a phone number, 206 number. There's an 800 number. 206, I pick up if I'm not on the phone or it goes into voicemail and I'll call you back. And I want to make myself available starting in March. I want to put together a calendar on my website that people can actually schedule a 15-minute or a 30-minute talk with me. And just, we can talk. They know my story and they can talk about me and my story, or we can talk about what they're going through. And I'm going to make myself available at least a couple of hours
wow.
moving forward. There'll be a small nominal fee. This is nothing but just making sure I set the time aside and listen. And I hope the majority of the callers are going to be men. That's what I hope. Men, hey, I'm a guy. I know I've been through it. I'm one of you. Pick up the phone and call, and I'll definitely be talking with you and helping you through this.
Wow, James, it's powerful stuff. In your honest opinion, why is it harder for an African American male? Because it's hard enough for a male anyway. Let's just be honest. Males, we have that hard headedness and we have that ego. And like you say, we're competitors and we've been brought up our whole life that, we have to be the man of the house. And, so those things are conditioned into our brain. But why is it harder for an African American male over a white male when we already know that percentages already show that males are more, and the stats are there to prove it? But
Yeah.
why is it even harder for an African American? Because, like I'm saying, my adopted son is African American, and I want to make sure that if he's ever going through things and he feels like if I'm not able to connect with him on that level as father to son, that there are resources available out there for them. And why is it so hard for African American men?
Well, I think a big part of it is that in our African American communities, men have to play this bravado role of machoism and masculinity and toughness and not crying and not backing down. And so many times it gets them into trouble of leading to gang life and street life and incarceration, unfortunately. But I think we grow up with that mindset, mainly probably because so many of us are missing a father figure at home. I mentioned my father was at home and my mother throughout my growing up years until I was in my mid 30s. They finally divorced at that point. But my dad was there. And, he kept me on the straight and narrow long before George Raveling got a hold of me. Dad was there doing that kind of thing. Our African American boys don't have that. 70, 80% of them don't have a positive male role model in their life, whether it's their biological father or a positive male figure. And so we have to go and play this role of being tough and being uh, take on anything. And I'm going to protect, moms. I'm going to protect my sister. I'm going to protect everybody. But in the meantime, we're just human beings. We have all the same basic needs that everybody else does. And if we're able to pull those, and I call them defenses, pull those defensive barriers down and allow yourself to reach out and connect with other people in a healthy, meaningful way, and allow them to reach into you and connect with you in a healthy, meaningful way, that would go a very, very long way towards getting our communities in a healthier state of mind and behavior towards each other. It tears me to no end seeing the black on black violence every single weekend out of Chicago and Baltimore and St. Louis and LA and New York. It's just incredible what we're doing to each other. And it's mainly because of this bravadoism I'm talking about. Being the tough guy on the block, being number one. That's the big mix of it there, Scott. And
Yeah.
you know, it's something that we're born into. And if we don't have good guidance and good parenting throughout the early years, especially, we're
Amen. Those transformative years, you bet.
we're prone to keep on doing that kind of behavior and dropping out of high school and heading to the streets and heading to incarceration. It's just
Wow.
unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah, that I agree with you, and I see what you're sharing, and we've both been able to be on the highest stage, in the NBA. So let's kind of change gears there because this has been so powerful. What are your feelings on Adam Silver and how the NBA has grabbed a hold of social injustices and some of the messages that they've sent, the last few years, and how they're allowing the players to use their platforms for social injustices, and what does that mean to James Donaldson to see that active today?
Well, in this day and age with social media, everybody's got the platform, everybody's got their voice, and depends on how much you amplify it to get it out there that you can be heard. The NBA is no different. All the players have huge, huge followings on Twitter and Facebook, LinkedIn, all the rest of this. And so when they say something, especially if it's controversial or if it's not completely with the narrative, or it might be completely with the narrative, it gets a lot of attention. Back in when I was playing, David Stern ruled the roost. And David Stern, he would make the rounds to training camp every season to tell the guys, hey, we don't want you to be speaking out on political issues. Keep it to yourself. Now, this is way before the internet, way before social
Right,
media.
right.
You'd have to get a staff writer on the local newspaper to write something down that you said. Uh, but I think those days are bygone years now. This is a whole new era. Our players need to be responsible. Our country is divided and as partisan as I've ever seen it. And I think when you add fuel to the fire on one side or the other, it doesn't do anything but continue to divide. I'm all about healing and building bridges to bring people together and not dividing. I was that way as a political candidate. I'm that way in my community. I'm that way in every community I've ever been to. And I lived all around the world, getting along with people, people loving me. And that's the way that we could be. And this great platform the NBA players have and the NFL players have, it could be used for so much more social justice good of bringing people together if they would just look at it slightly differently and say, okay, I'm not going to just throw my 2 cents in and inflame things. I'm going to encourage people. My stuff on social media is all about positive, encouraging stuff that I post up. You never see a negative thing from me because I want people to love each other and to be there for each other.
Yeah, and you show that with action, and you do it daily, and I'm a fan, and I see a lot of your social media messages, and how you're using your podcast now. As a matter of fact, I saw Ruthie Bolton was going to be a guest on your show, and she was a guest on our show a few years back, and a powerful story because she suffered through domestic violence and has a great message herself, and I'm thinking about what you just shared with us, talking about David Stern. David Stern and Russ Granick, who was the deputy commissioner at the time, they were in, where they're trying to make the NBA become broadcasted, and they were trying to get TV sponsorship behind it. So they were changing the dress code. They were trying to get away from, I guess, what was a thug mentality, or how Caucasian America would view the NBA because there were so many African American players. And do you
Right.
think that had something to do with why David Stern was trying to wheel that way and try to not really muzzle you from using your platforms, but yet was trying to change the appearance and perspective to make it a marketable tool so that way games were no longer tape delayed.
I think so. I think they had a big part to do with it. And then also remember in the mid to late 70s, the NBA had a serious drug culture problem.
Yeah.
Cocaine and marijuana and all these things. And so the NBA was still, it had made its mark on America, the fabric of society, but it wasn't quite widespread, cross-cultural, totally accepted everywhere you went. I told you stories about what Lenny Wilkins shared with me back in the
That's
60s.
right.
So we've come a long way. But to sell yourself to corporate America and to white American audiences who pay ticket prices to go to the games, the vast majority of the audiences, 80% are white, who watch it on TV nonstop, big, huge portion of white folks, you've got to be able to sell yourself to that. And that's what David Stern was crafting in his way of telling us, hey, be quiet, don't speak out on that. And every once in a while, somebody might speak up and say something. I remember when Magic Johnson came down with HIV. That was a huge topic that David didn't want us to talk about. But several guys, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, they spoke out loudly about it and let their feelings be known.
Yeah, I remember those days because it's almost like where were you when? And when Magic Johnson made that announcement, everybody was just in shock. And we all were like, oh my goodness. But again, there's a platform that during that time and that age, how could they bring awareness to such a disease to try to, get things moving in the right direction for healing, as you mentioned. So when you see Adam Silver today,
Mhm.
leading the NBA and using, their platform and allowing these players to, be a platform and use it as a vessel because basketball and sports, I mean, it's such a respite. It's sports entertainment and it gets us away from our daily lives. How well do you think Adam Silver is doing today with what's going on in the America that we live in? Because it is divisive, isn't? And there is so much bipartisan and there are so many labels and stigmas out there. How do you feel Adam Silver's doing?
Well, I wish he wouldn't be quite as woke as he is. Uh, and I keep in mind and consideration, I'm in my mid 60s. A lot of these NBA guys are in their mid 20s. So it's a whole generational thing that's totally changed. I don't really appreciate seeing all the Black Lives Matter slogans and things painted on the court, every other TV commercial about a social justice message. But that's me, But I think I represent a large part of the viewing audience as well, if not the paying audience. And so I think Adam Silver needs to find a better balance to make sure that we have broad spread appeal on both sides of the aisle, on and into every culture that follows the NBA. I mean, the NBA, as they say, it is fantastic. It really is. But I know so many people now that have turned off totally to the NBA. They will not watch a game.
Because of those political messages being shoved down their throat?
Absolutely. Yes. So much because of that. And the NFL, the same way. I mean, they have a lot more of a bigger footprint than the NBA does and a huge, corporate and all that behind them. But the NBA, I think, is still trying to find its footing with these social messages. And so I just hope Adam Silver finds a better balance of way to portray the product out there to every American, not just a slice of it.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair statement because you are out there, trying to find the greater good for society and for our communities. And so to find that balance and to have that narrative that's out there that's going to fit everybody's needs and not just one side.
Yeah, I mean, and I've been through all that as an African American man. I mean, back in my 30s, I was reading every African American book possible. Malcolm X, Nation of Islam, Louis Farrakhan, Martin Luther King, you name it, I read it and I got into it. I understood. I was angry at times as an African American male back in my 30s. knowing my history, knowing what we'd been through. But here I am 30 years later, and I have a balanced approach to how I view society and how I want society to view me. I think all of us have to go through that growing curve to really figure out who we are and what is important in life. And so I think I'm very, very on top of all the social issues that occur around me. But I think these big corporations, they just need to do a better job of making it broad appeal to get as many people buying into it as possible and stop so much of the divisive nature that goes on in our society.
Yeah, James, I think it's powerful words that you're sharing with us, and I appreciate that because I know sometimes they're very touchy subjects. Was Muhammad Ali ever like an influence for you when you saw some of the battles that he was going through back in his day?
Well, as a fighter, he was the greatest. He was one of my
Oh,
all time.
the goat.
Yes, yes. The mouth that roared, I didn't care for it as much. I mean, he backed it up more times than not, 9 times out of 10. But that was, and I know it was showmanship, it was selling tickets, it was entertainment. But sometimes some of the things he said that were just so awful and so hateful towards, Smoking Joe Frazier or George Foreman and Ken Norton. I mean, you don't have to degrade your opponent. Just show respect and get out there and the best person wins, the best team wins. I wish Ali did more of that, but he put boxing on the map, and it's here to stay. And there's never been anybody like him. Probably never will be again.
All right, well said. How about when you look at, and again, this is just an amazing discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, again, this is James Donaldson, author of 2 fantastic books, Celebrating Your Gift of Life and also Standing Above the Crowd, which is also the podcast that he hosts. Just a powerful hour, and we're in the second hour, and just this the content that he's sharing and him giving of himself, it has just been amazing. uh, when you see things like Colin Kaepernick making his stand the way that he did when he knelt, or maybe Mahmoud Abdul Rauf in the NBA, who was of Muslim faith and didn't feel comfortable, and he made a stand. How do you feel when you see individuals being kind of taken out of their careers and losing their livelihood for the stances that they've taken? How does
Yeah.
that make James Donaldson feel?
Yeah, it's called the cancel culture, and I don't like that at all. I mean, this is America. This is a democracy. We all have a freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of expression, and we shouldn't be chastised for it. But again, in this day and age, with this partisanship and this divide that we have, you could easily be canceled if you don't go along with the narrative that's accepted. I'm looking at the truck drivers up in Canada right now. I'm
Right.
I'm all for them. But, and I'm waiting for Americans to take a stand and to make this government pay attention to us. This is an elected form of government. They're supposed to represent us, the people. Canada's the same way. But Canada's cracking down on these people now and sending them home and threatening them with fines and losing their licenses. That's not the democracy I grew up with.
Yeah. Yeah. And then how about, I heard just recently, James, talking about current events, the thousands of employees that lost their jobs in New York because they refused to vaccinate. Now, again, that's a whole nother topic. But when you hear things like that,
Yeah.
what can we do to make it better? How can we change the narrative, and how can we empower the people so that, every decision that we make, you either love or hate somebody. There's no compromise and there's no in between. How can we mend that? How can we heal that? And how can we be better? Because we all have to evolve and mature and grow. But yet, whatever happened to the days of, I don't have to agree with everything you say, but I still respect you.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly right. And again, I think we're just in this strange place right now. And me speaking as a wannabe politician and still have some political aspirations, we have to get the politics out of it all, because I think that divides us more than anything, especially these last 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, whatever, however far back you want to go. Uh, I take it back to 9/11 when, George Bush said, you're either with us or you're against us. And that just has a way of dividing. And like I said, I just don't understand this kind of mindset, this kind of talk, because I'm all about bringing people together, cultures and different mindsets, different ideas, different thoughts, different ages, everything could all be together, and we could utilize those talents from all these different aspects. So I think it's really the politics of it all. The whole vaccine rollout, the vaccines got political very quickly.
Yeah.
Half the country wanted to take them. The other half said, no, there's no way I'm going to take them. And that's just where we've been ever since the last 2 years.
Yeah. Yeah. What with James Donaldson, with your political kind of foresight,
Mhm.
what would James Donaldson do today to say, you know what, I'm here for you. I'm listening to you. Let's heal together, because we should be the United States, but we're kind of the divided states right now. And how can we start mending those bridges? How can we start working together and coming together and losing all the titles, either red, left, right, blue, red? How can we truly unite?
Well, I think if you look at things now, the January 6th, what
The
do we call
insurrection.
it? Insurrection is the big thing that has a wedge
Yeah.
dividing America. Red America versus blue America. If I was Joe Biden, I would say, hey, I'm going to forgive these folks who did these things on January 6th. They've been held up in prison or in jail for a year without having the right to a speedy trial. We're going to forgive this. Yes, there was some property damage. Yes, there was some trespassing. There was some violating of going into Congress people's offices and things like that. But if you look back 6 months before that, the summer of 2020, we had dozens and dozens of cities go up in flames. And the same thing. So one side doesn't want to forgive that. The other side doesn't want to forgive that. And a President Biden or whoever is going to be president needs to say, hey, everybody, we're coming together. We're forgiving all of that. Okay. If you need to make amends and reprimands for the damage that you caused, you'll do that. But no one's going to jail. We're forgiving all of that, and we're going to bring this country together. And I think that will go over huge on both sides of this country that's divided so terribly now.
I agree, James. Thank you for sharing that, because I think there's so many out here who are looking for guidance, who are looking for direction, and there's many of us out there who want to get the hatred out of their hearts, and who want to reunite and be a part of the strongest economy, and come back and resurrect this United States, and be a powerful player on a global scale.
Yes, I agree. I mean, America is still the best place. You've lived around the world. I've lived around the world.
That's right.
Can't wait to get back to the good US of A every single time.
That's
Uh,
right.
there's no place like it. Democracy isn't perfect. It's messy oftentimes, but it's the best thing going if we all do our part and just realize that, hey, we are all equal under our flag, underneath our constitutional rights. We all have the same equal opportunities, especially nowadays. This is what I tell our Black American community. Yes, 50, 60 years ago, no, we didn't have equal rights. We didn't have equal opportunities. But now we do. Now we do. There's absolutely nothing that should keep you back except for yourself.
Amen.
If you want to go, you can go to school. If you want to start a small business, you can start a small business. The government will help you start a small business with a grant or a loan. And there's so many more. This is what Lenny Wilkins tells me all the time too. He tells me about his time back in St. Louis, where his neighbors burned a cross on his yard back in the 50s. And he was a St. Louis Hawks NBA player. Okay, the neighbors burned a cross on his lawn. This isn't then. And we have to realize this is 2022. We've never been in a better place than we are now. African Americans, Hispanics, LGBTQ, and like Martin Luther King used to say, we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. But
Amen.
Things are
Lo-
so better now, Scott, and
yeah.
there should be no reason why a African American youth, boy or girl, cannot make their way and graduate from high school, find their way onto college, and go out and get a great job that will really start building that net worth that we are lacking. But now's the time.
Yeah, build those bridges out of generational poverty and give back to our communities to strengthen each other, empower each other, and build each other up. James, I'll tell you what, you're getting out there into politics. I want to be on your campaign because I believe in what you're standing for, brother. And I love this conversation and dialogue that we're sharing.
Thank you. It's been wonderful. I love the fact that we can talk about anything under the sun. I don't have anything off limits. I like to talk about all these things. I want to talk about these things. And it gives people a better insight to me, the man, rather than just being 7'2", former NBA ball player,
There
which is
you go.
which is what people see when they first see me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That stigma is there, and I enjoyed the basketball stories, and I think a lot of
Yeah,
people enjoy that because we see these people on TV, but we pull up our socks just like everybody else. We may be extraordinary because of the extraordinary work ethic and work habits and life skills that we've picked up along the way, but you know what? We all bleed red, and there's only one race, and that's the human race, and when we can build up that race, man. Let's build up each other because steel sharpens steel, and my candle is not going to go out just because I've ignited your candle.
that's right. That's so true. It's so true. It's funny when people see me around town, and if they have no idea I used to play basketball, and they'll ask me, "Did you play basketball?" And I'm like, "No." I didn't."
Well, real quick, we've got a few minutes here because this has been a great second hour. And James, I can't thank you enough. Ladies and gentlemen, this is James Donaldson, 20-year professional basketball player. But the service of the things that he did on the court is nowhere near the service that he's providing as being the author of these two outstanding books. I implore you to go out and empower yourself with the tools that are given in these books. His foundation is amazing. James, let's talk about, because you are in Seattle, do you hope and could you ever see yourself putting yourself in a position to bring the Seattle Sonics back to the NBA? Because we see the WNBA prosper out there with that franchise, but man, aren't you just excited to maybe see a couple franchises maybe being put in Las Vegas and then out there in Seattle and putting two more strong franchises in the NBA?
Absolutely. I mean, this was one of my platform parts as running for mayor last year. Was if the Sonics, if I did become mayor, I was going to work diligently to make sure the NBA came back. Absolutely. One of the reasons the NBA left is because of our political climate at the time. We just had no desire to keep the Sonics here after 42 years and a great fan base that loved the team. But our political leaders just said, okay, go ahead and take them out of town. And, we're not going to miss them. We got all these other teams. No, we missed them terrifically, terribly. We missed them. And so I would have worked diligently. I'm still, as soon as some conversation heats up, I'm always part of the conversation of trying to bring the Sonics back. The new mayor in town is Bruce Harrell, who's a good friend of mine for the last 30, 40 years. I'm sure Bruce will put me on some kind of committee once the Sonics start talking about coming back. So I'm going to be involved, and I want to make sure that we get a team back here, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 years. I'd love to end up in a C-suite corporate opportunity, managing the office or doing something in the community. That's what I would love to see. But we have a long way to go because right now there's absolutely no whisper, except Adam Silver had mentioned that LA or Las Vegas and Seattle would be on the list. That's the only thing we've heard. We haven't heard anything substantial for years and years out here in Seattle yet. I'm waiting to hear something substantial.
Man, I hope we can just with this show, maybe we can put a little gas on the fire and let's get that ball rolling because think of the economic growth and opportunity for businesses and just what it would do for that community to have your Sonics come back, and to have that community get behind something, and to see more restaurants and see your hotels, and your tourism would pick up. And I
Mhm.
just see so many positives where it'd be such a win-win for not only the city of Seattle, but for the league in whole, to have those Sonics come back.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm part of every Facebook page out here, Save Our Sonics or Bring Our Sonics Back. There's dozens of them. I'm part of all of them. And so I chime in and let them know that, hey, I'm supportive. I'm going to be here helping to make sure this thing happens. And so whenever these owners decide to divvy up their pie a couple more slices and bring two more teams onto the mix, I'm hoping Seattle is going to be one of those two teams.
I love it, James. I can't believe we've almost talked for 2 hours with part one and now part two. It's gone so quickly. And I just feel like, we're just a couple guys sitting over the water cooler having a conversation, or we're sitting at the chair at the barbershop just talking. And it's been so enlightening. And, just to get to know you better and to connect with you and see your values and your high character. Uh, it's uplifting, and I thank you for that. And I know our viewers are going to be inspired and empowered and motivated in some way. And I hope that they put these words into action with all the things that you're doing with your foundations and your books. And James, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
What last words? Because we got just a few more minutes here. What other words would you like to share with the viewers and listeners today of the Coach Scott Field Show about James Donaldson, and who James Donaldson is, and what you can do in the communities?
I'd like to wrap it up just by saying, God is good. And I've
Amen.
been a lifelong Christian. I go to church every single Sunday. I have got a beautiful church home for the last 35 years in Seattle. And he brought me through this very, very difficult time that I went through, just to help me find this next chapter of life. I've had a professional sports chapter, I've had a business chapter, a community chapter, a political chapter, and now this chapter. And this chapter is the most rewarding and most fulfilling, to be able to talk to people, talk to those three men over the holidays, and just be there for them and help them, and let them know, hey, I've been there. You guys, you don't understand. And they're trying to tell me how bad things are and how bad they feel. I say, I was right there where you are, but I made it through, and you will too. That's what the reward is from the work I'm doing now. And I just want to say that I hope that our message gets out there and encourages more and more people, especially us guys, to reach out for help. Help is there. People care about you. People love you. People are going to miss you if you're gone. Don't throw your life away. Make sure you cherish it. And, God told us to go out and live life and live it abundantly. And that's what I'm doing. And that's what all of us can do.
Oh, James, thank you for sharing those powerful words. Faith-based, faith-driven, a man of God, high character. I could go on and on. There's not enough superlatives or adjectives to describe, the man I see before me now. And I know this is not fake. I mean, this is who you are, and this is what you stand for. Thank you so much for sharing this time with us. And we're going to have to have you come back, because I know God's not finished with you yet. And this next chapter in your journey is going to be probably the most rewarding of your journey. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing the deepest, darkest parts of your journey. And I know you have inspired and uplifted others, and you've probably connected with others who are going through the same thing that you have gone through. And I thank you, because I've drawn strength from it. So, James, God bless you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service and all the wonderful things that you will continue to do moving forward.
Thank you so much, Scott. It's just been a real pleasure. And, I tell my story all the time. It still gets me emotional and choked up and tearing up. But it just reminds me of how real it was. What I went through was so, so real, and right on the precipice of throwing it all away. And I'm so glad I didn't. Not a day goes by, I don't thank God, and I'm still here to be able to see the things I see and enjoy the things I enjoy, better than ever, more than ever.
Amen.
Yeah. So
Amen.
Thank you so much, Coach. Thank you.
No, amen, brother. God bless you. It's just been wonderful, and I'm not overselling this. It's just that I'm so moved by your spirit, and again, your candle has lit my candle. So I thank you for that. And ladies and gentlemen, this has been a wonderful 2 hours with James Donaldson, the man, the myth, the legend, the politician. There's so many things again we can say, but I thank you for your time. Like the Facebook page. Let's share this content. Let's share these stories to uplift others. And men, let's put our egos aside and take care of each other and uplift each other. And again, share the content, subscribe to the channels. I know all those algorithms are important, but there are no ego rhythms here. We're uplifting each other. So James, thank you so much for your time. God bless you. And hey, I am a fan of the man. That's all I can say. JD, I appreciate you, buddy.
Thank you. Be well. Have a great day. Bye
God
bye.
bless. God bless.